Hola, welcome to POV with me, Jose, on our media channel. And like we always do it, before we start with today's content, you just have to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to do that, and then also hit the notification button so that you stay updated with all the news we have for you from the world of sports. Now, let's begin with that Copa del Rey round of 32 game played at the home of Barcelona. So it was Barcelona actually taking on Real Betis after their triumph over Real Madrid in the Supercopa España final in Saudi Arabia. So it looks like Barcelona are beginning to find their rhythm and their form again because they've been able to turn things around after a slump at some point in the season. So after winning just twice in their last 6 games, prior to the 4 they won, Barcelona are actually on a 4-game winning run. So it was a 4-0 win over CD Barbastro in the Copa del Rey before they traveled, to play in the Supercopa España. So they also beat Athletic Bilbao by 2-0. Then they trashed Real Madrid, their arch rivals, by 5-2. And then it was a thumping victory again against Real Betis in the Copa del Rey. So in the span of 4 games, Barcelona have already scored 16 goals, which means that they are averaging 4 goals per game in their last 4 games in all competitions. 2 games in the Supercopa España and then 2 in the Copa del Rey. So it looks like gradually after veering off that top form, after taking a slump in the season, Barcelona and then their coach Hansi Flick are back to winning ways, and they are doing it like they started the first or the season when they were playing with a higher line, setting those wicked offside traps, and their opponent and their opposition strikers were just falling for it so easily. Now it looks like they're back to their normal best. So they've won 4 on a row, and one of their star men actually has to be the youngster, the 17-year-old Lamine Yamal, who keeps on getting onto the score sheet. And it's not just about scoring, but how he impacts games and also how he sets up, his mate. So he set up Rafinha for the 3rd one. Then he went ahead to score a 5th goal, which nearly got chucked off for offside, but for the intervention of VAR. So in their last 10 games, actually, they've won 6, and they've lost twice in that span, because they lost to Atletico Madrid in the Laliga, and then also they lost to Leganés in the Laliga. But at this point, would you say that that triumph in the Supercopa España final against Real Madrid has given them the impetus to actually get back to their feet and that old form to challenge for the league title? Mind you, they are 5 points beneath Real Madrid, who are second on the league table, and then 6 points adrift of top place Atletico de Madrid. But after that form we are seeing in the Supercopa España and then also in the Copa del Rey, do you think Barcelona are back and they are back with a bang? At the Emirates, where Arsenal were hosting Tottenham Hotspur. So Tottenham Hotspurs were actually coming into that game with their tails up because they've not really had a fine form. But for Arsenal, after Liverpool had dropped point against Nottingham Forest at the City Ground, they knew that this was a golden opportunity for them to close in on their title rival. So the game started and it was Heung-min Son who netted first for Tottenham Hotspur. And you'd be thinking it could be, one of those days where nothing just seemed to work for the home side. But Arsenal, they are beginning to show some, character in their games. After going down, it didn't take that much time for them to claw their way back. So it was a corner kick, and we've known how good, and impeccable sometimes they've been from set-piece situations. And sometimes one will say they even enjoy it when they are being awarded corner kicks, even more than penalty kicks, because the probability of Arsenal scoring from a corner kick is quite high than even a spot kick. So it took a spot kick for them, and it was Gabriel actually, who was trying to attack that one with so much power and so much presence. But Solanke also was forced under pressure to turn that into his own post, and then bam, it was 1-1. 10 minutes later, the young guy, I wouldn't say a young guy, but one of those guys who you could term as a sit man or the 12th man, always making impact from the bench. That's Leandro Trossard. So Martinelli hasn't really been in great form, so Leandro Trossard got the nod, to play in that game. And what a goal he scored after being set up by Odegaard. So it looks like, despite the fact that most of the players are out and some of them, are not really in top shape, the likes of Saka out to the injury, Ethan Nwaneri out to injury. There's Gabriel Jesus, who is also facing a lengthy time, on the sideline. So these are players who are missing, but Arsenal still managed to get things done. And it was Leandro Trossard with a beautiful finish, to give them that 2-1 lead. And then the second half, or the second 45, was a bit lethargic. Didn't really have that much firepower like the first half did. But nevertheless, it was a London derby which didn't fail to live up to the billing. But for Tottenham Hotspur, nothing seemed to be working for them. And during the post-match interview, their coach Ange Postecoglou looked a bit crestfallen. It looks like things are not really going on well for them. But for Arsenal, that win sends them 4 points below Liverpool. Yeah, Liverpool have got a game in hand in the Merseyside derby against Everton. That game has been scheduled for February, but it's still game on. If you're a Premier League favorite or a fan of the Premier League, then you should know that just 4 points separating the two teams, with Liverpool with a game in hand, we should expect some twists and turns as far as the title race is concerned. But the question is, who do you think goes on to win the Premier League title? You think it's going to Liverpool, or you think Arsenal have a greater chance after, at some point they were 9 points below Liverpool, and then the point gap has been closed to just 4. So in another game played at the G-Tech Community Stadium, where Brentford played host to Manchester City, it was a game that everyone expected to be very cagey, because Brentford, barring Liverpool, are the only side with the best record at home in the division. So Manchester City went into that game at the back of a 3-game winning streak. They had won a couple of games. They had beaten Leicester City at the Kemper. They had beaten West Ham United at home. And then also they brushed aside Salford City, the League 2 side, by 8-0. So entering the game, you'd be thinking that Pep Guardiola, following his divorce issues and all that, Manchester City were actually playing well. And coming up against a team that's being led by 2 African players. That's Brandon Mbeumo, the Cameroonian, and then also the Congolese and John Wissa. So yeah, it was a tough game. We enjoyed the first half, but it was barren, and you'd be thinking that, after such a cagey game where both teams had their moments, but none could just break the deadlock and entering into a recess with a stalemate, then, the goals in this game wouldn't have really come to life, because we didn't see any goals in the first half. Even after the hour mark, it was still barren. Then the rose for Foden. He's still the best player in the league after being awarded the Premier League Player of the League last season, at the end of last season. So he is still the best player in the league. So he gave City the lead. It was a deserving one, despite the fact that you could say that Brentford also had their chances, and they could have buried most of the chances they created. So for Foden, put City 1 up, and then minutes later, he added 1 more. So you'd be thinking, oh yeah, City are cruising to 3 points and then 2 goals. Or maybe they could have even added to their tally. But, you could also say that City's troubles never went anywhere, because you look at the teams they've beaten during that 3-game winning run, and it was Leicester who find themselves in, the relegation zone. It was West Ham also, who were not really playing well under Julian Lopetegui. And after that defeat, the coach had to be sacked. And then there was Salford City that also played in the League 2. So there were not that much for Manchester City. But against a real opponent, that game against Brentford actually gave them a deja vu, like a game that they played in the UEFA Champions League against Feyenoord some months back, where City took a 3-0 lead, and then they relinquished that lead in the space of 10 minutes. So Brentford actually showed they were strong at home, and then they are the team with the second best home record in the league, and they managed to claw their way back. Yohan Wissa continued with his impressive form in the league, scoring, pulling one back for the host, and then it was Rosleb also rising highest to not home across to make it 2-2, and they could have even sealed victory, because in the dying embers of the game, it was Brandon Mbeumo with a left-footed curler, nearly finding the left-hand side, of the post. Before it was Nathan Ake who was there just at the right place to head that one out. So Manchester City haven't really impressed, if I should put it. Yeah, they've won 3 games, but mind you, before winning 3 games on the bounce, they had only managed 1 victory in their last 13 games, and they won 3 on the bounce against relatively or comparatively weaker opponent. But Brentford gave them a run for their money. And for Pep Guardiola, it's still, the news about his divorce with his wife making the airwaves, because after 30 years of marriage, it looks like he is set to split what is why. But for City, they find themselves sixth after that draw at the GT Community Stadium, and their season keeps on being a top 31. They keep on blowing hot and cold. But I just can't say that City are real title contenders after that draw. So to the City grounds, where was Nottingham Forest also hosting Liverpool. So Liverpool this season in the Premier League have only lost one game all season. That game came very, very early into the season, into I think the first 4 or 5 games of the season, where they lost at home, and it still remains their only defeat at home in all competitions this season, when Nottingham Forest, beat them by a lone goal. So going into that game at the City ground, Liverpool were aiming not just to win 3 points, but then also to avenge that painful defeat at the hands of Nottingham Forest a couple of months ago. But Nottingham Forest, they've been one of the best defensive sides so far this season in the league under Nuno Espirito Santo, and then also their goalkeeper Marcels has been in fine form. But the game started with Liverpool just pouring on the pressure, hitting at Nottingham Forest, but it just took one counter attack, Elanga finding Wood, and then bam, Nottingham Forest had taken the lead in that game. So it was Nottingham Forest playing with the low block and then trying to hit Liverpool on the counter. And Chris Wood, he's been so lethal, and he's having a phenomenal season. And on record, this happens to be one of his most prolific seasons as a striker. Not when at Burnley, but actually when he joined Nottingham Forest. It looks like he's been able to rediscover his old form. So he put Nottingham in the lead, and all they had to do for the remaining time was to defend with everything. So they were defending for their lives, and they did it so resolutely, until in the second half, Diogo Jota rose highest to knock home, a corner kick. You would say yes, partially it was down to some poor and shambolic defending from Nottingham Forest, something you can attribute to them. The whole of the season, they've been great defensively, but yeah, Liverpool managed to find their way to just break that tight Nottingham Forest defense, and then Diogo Jota made it happen. So 1-1, and you'll be thinking that it's time for Liverpool to just make things happen. But fortunately, Nottingham Forest still stayed compact. Yes, their goalkeeper Marcels came to the rescue a couple of times, but it ended 1-0 after 90 minutes. So it leaves a lot of question marks being asked after that game. So after that draw, Liverpool, they have ended up drawing their last 2 games against Manchester United at the Anfield, 2-2 draw, and then 1-0 draw at the City ground, which means that they've only opened up a 4-point gap after 20 games or so, because they have a game in hand to play against Everton. But just 4 points separates them from Arsenal, who are second on the league log. And now people are saying, the neutrals are saying, it's actually game on, and the title race could go down to the wire. Perhaps maybe match day 38, where a winner could be crowned. But it's not really good. Some are also saying that Liverpool have not really experienced any bad run of form. So perhaps maybe there's a time that it starts after that draw against Manchester United, and then also that draw against Nottingham Forest. But you think that the rest still have what it takes to win the Premier League title this season?